All right, going to resume with the Turkish chronicle about the Varna Crusade. So this is part two. This is an account of how infidels were as low as the dust came to Nigobulu and were defeated. Hopefully on this one, the sound quality is a little bit better. The last one I used some a mic that wasn't very good, a headphone mic. So I think it would be better, but it turned out it was not. So hopefully sounds better. But anyway, I'll just jump right into the reading. Um, as the infidels approached, the lord of Nicobolu, Ferisbeolu, gave orders. A few days in advance, he placed everyone and everything, dogs, cats, hens, cockerels, men and boys, in ambush on all sides. He left the gates of the castle open, and putting his trust in God, he and the warriors of Islam kept watch for the infidels who were as low as the dust. Then one day the infidels appeared, and those proud and accursed men drew up their ranks. They saw that there was nobody in the castle, and assuming the garrison had been deserted and left, they informed the wicked man, called it Zupa and Yanko. Yanko gave the command, and they marched into the castle ready to seize it in the garrison with a host of infidels. Meanwhile, Ferisbeolu was ready and waiting, as the infidels who were as low as the dust went unhesitatingly forward to enter the castle. God is the greatest of the great. Ferisbeolu gave the order, and with a single cry of Allah, Allah, the soldiers of Islam drew their swords and launched an attack on those unsuspecting infidels with such as words cannot describe. As the infidels who were as low as the dust advanced without a care, they blocked their path like Alexander's dam, and wielded their swords to such effect that there was not a woman in Nicobolu who had not fought and cut off heads. Within a short time, the infidels who were as low as the dust were routed and fled. Yeah. The warriors, meanwhile, came out from the castle and seized those accursed men's standards with their black crosses and placed them upside down in the battlements. They fired cannon and arquebus from the walls and battlements until the infidels, who were as low as the dust, did not know what had hit them and could no longer help one another. The evil-doing king said, "This castle was not a problem, but my goal is Edirne. Let us go and seize Edirne, and afterwards send men to these castles. If they still fight, we shall bombard them and capture the castle whether they like it or not. If they give up the castle without a fight, we shall accept their surrender and make them deliver the castle. Then, when they have done this, we shall slaughter their men, take their women and boys prisoner, and plunder all the provisions and belongings." With this, the infidels who were as low as the dust left the castle behind and went off in the direction of the Osama River. Ferisbeolu sent the black standards of the infidels, who were as low as the dust, to Edirne, together with a number of heads and a few living infidels. Just a quick aside, that's a very common Ottoman practice, presenting heads and prisoners to the Sultan. And anyway, continuing, the Grand Vizier's deputy saw these, presented them to the prince. That day the prince offered up many prayers to Ferisbeolu. The deputy pasha, for his part, sent him a letter of congratulations. "My son," he wrote, "all honor you. May the Padishah grant you this benefaction. Now, my son, you should keep a close watch and inform us of the direction the infidels who are as low as the dust propose to take, so that we can block the passes, and do not allow the infidels to reach the shore here before the Sultan Murad Khan arrives." He closed the letter with further words of admonition and sent it to Sultan Murad Khan. Just checking how we're doing on time. Okay. We'll go ahead and continue the next section. The siege of the castle of Tonovi. The infidels, who were as low as the dust, marched on in fury. As they approached the castle of Tonovi, the evil-doing king sent two special troops ahead with orders to put the castle of Tonovi firmly under siege and capture without showing mercy. When Ferisbeolu heard what the infidels were planning, he divided his soldiers into two groups and put his brother in command of one, saying, "Brother, you should go and spy on the infidels in such and such a place. I shall wait in ambush with my troops on this side. When the infidels see how few of you are there, few of you there are and attack, you should at first engage them and then flee, drawing the infidels towards me. When I enter the battle with a cry of Allah, you should attack the infidels from the rear, and may God grant victory. This is what they did. As the infidels, who were as low as the dust, were approaching Tonovi castle beating their drums, they noticed a few Turkish soldiers standing on one side. They at once seized the opportunity to attack them, and these two joined the battle, luring them into the ambush. At that moment they came to the point where the trap was laid. Fedez Beolu and his troops raised their horsetails and standards, beating their war drums, drew their swords with a single cry of Allah, Allah. They attacked those accursed ones with such vigor that the infidels, who were as low as the dust, assumed it was Sultan Murad and immediately took to flight. The soldiers of Islam fought a battle such as cannot be described. It was such that while one of these accursed ones had been detailed to face 10 Turks, 1,000 of them could not counter a single Turk, and they took to flight. The troops of Islam took more booty than can be counted. No one bothered with the common stuff, but took only pure gold and silver coins. The infidels, who were as low as the dust, forgot all about Tonovi and fled in fear for their lives back to the army of the evil-doing king. Zupanyanko asked them what had happened. Those accursed ones told him of the retribution they had suffered. When the king had heard what had happened, he was extremely upset and said, "You are brave young men, each one of you detailed to face 10 Turks. What happened to make you suffer such a rout, and to lose so much of your property and provisions to the Turks? The best thing now is to be sure that from today we do not become separated. Wherever we go, we should go as the whole army, so that the Turks will take fright and run away." He spoke a lot more of such nonsense. Farias Beolu, for his part, once again loaded the heads of the infidels, as low as the dust, onto carts and sent them on to Edirne. When he made known what he had done to the infidels, the pashas offered up many prayers to him and his followers and submitted information to the prince. The prince too offered up many prayers and added offices to the ones that they already held. I'll pause here and do another little bit of commentary. So, added offices to the ones I already held. Another sort of common Ottoman thing during a time of war. If there's a victory, the pashas get additional offices. So basically, other bureaucratic duties or something, and it means more of a salary essentially. Um, let's see. Maybe we'll read a little more. Um, Skipping ahead, so the chapter following the uh, description of Ternova, Sultan Murad Khan's imperial progress from Anatolia to the shore. So just describing the march and what happens. Um, he makes sure he says orders a transport ship to be filled with arquebusiers. So kind of interesting that there's uh, more reference to musketeers during this crusade. Quite interesting. The European art kind of depicts Varna as mostly being knights and men at arms, which is not untrue because in the Italian wars there's still quite a few mounted men at arms. The French gendarmes are quite effective, and that's the first half of the 16th century. But I guess my point is just the amount of guns that they're bringing is even a surprise for me. Musketeers and artillery. Um, so yeah, just describing their march, the kind of men they're bringing. But we'll jump ahead here and look, and I'll read the siege of the castle of Shumlu, which I may be on the map. Let me see. I don't think so, unless it's. Okay, it's the Shumen there on the map, so not far from Varna proper. Okay. All right. So continuing with the reading. Meanwhile, the infidels who were as low as the dust marched to Shumlu. The inhabitants assumed the infidels would go straight past without paying the castle any attention. However, when they began to bombard Shumlu and the garrison saw what was happening, they too fought manfully, firing cannon and arquebus. Everyone fought as best they could. Some with there's a note here in the book that this word is omitted in the manuscript, so we don't know. Some with something, ellipses. Some with lances and some with arrows, so that there were few among them who had not performed 100 feats of arms. However, they were unwary, because the infidels were so numerous, they had no strength left to fight. By now it was evening, and with the infidels who were as low as the dust attacking from all sides, they could no longer resist. Seeing the inevitable had happened, they gathered together to bid each other farewell. Then, accepting death and commending themselves to God, each one went to his appointed place. Excuse me. That night, the infidels who were as low as dust set up great ladders and stood at the ready. In the morning, they attacked, climbing up the ladders, propped up against all four sides of the castle. When the warriors of Islam, men and women, saw this, they fought more vigorously than words can describe. Corpse piled upon corpse, and the infidels saw there would be no end to this. They sent forward about 30,000 infidels clad in steel armor. As a result, the weapons the warriors of Islam wielded could strike them, but could not cut. Clad like this, they began to pour into the castle. This time, the warriors of Islam shut themselves into the tower. However hard the infidels, who were as low as dust, tried, they could not take it. There was no end to the infidels who fell to the earth. Seeing like this, they would never succeed, they brought up fuel and set fire to the tower. Preferring to burn, the warriors of Islam did not yield. Some died, but some let themselves down from the tower. Thus the Muslims strive on behalf of the manifest religion. However, the infidels beneath the walls held up spikes, swords, and spears, and the people who threw themselves down from the tower fell onto these and gave up the ghost. In brief, the infidels captured the castle of Shumlu. The accursed man called Zupanyanko put on his hat and went into the king's presence. "You see, my king," he said, "this is how you capture a castle. No one will make them give up a castle simply by chattering." When he finished bragging like this, the king raised his head and, giving him encouragement, said, "You say you have captured a castle. What you call a castle is no more than a sheep pen. Captured a castle. Fine, but where were all those dukes of mine with canes in their hand? All those bonds of mine with rapiers in hand, all those armored men of mine to take on 10 Turks each? The merest stockade can cause us so much trouble. What will become of us when we reach Edirne? The stockade can put up such a resistance with 1 or 2,000 men. How will we fight against a garrison of 50 or 60,000? Do you not think, do you not reflect, do you imagine that these lands cannot be uh, the possessions of one man? One of these days we shall encounter the Turks. Then I shall see whether you are a man. If we defeat the Turks, then I too know that we shall see Edirne and promenade around it. Otherwise, we shall not be granted even the sight of it, let alone its conquest. May Narner be our helper, and Patriman Yandalus our assistant. Otherwise, there is no hope." Just as another sort of bit of a note, I'm not sure who Patriman Yandalus or Narner is supposed to be, and there's no footnote here to explain that. Maybe might be a Turkish way of trying to give like a name for like Christian like God or something, and maybe a saint. I don't know. I'm just sort of confused what that's supposed to be when I'm reading it. I'm also not sure where the Turkish chronicler is getting this dialogue from. I didn't read the introduction, so maybe it explains it, but it's sort of interesting, this back and forth that's rendered by the Turkish chronicler. Uh, anyway, continuing. Zupanyanko's eyes became shot with blood. "My king," he said, "why do you say such things? Have you heard something, or have the Turks attacked you? 1 or 2 Turks are prowling around us. Is it these you are afraid of? The Emperor has stationed a lot of ships to guard the Bosphorus. Okay, so again, another bit of note. So this is, of course, before the sack of Constantinople by the Ottomans. So there's still a runt Byzantine Empire, Byzantium, hanging on at Constantinople. Do you think the Turks have wings to fly over the sea, or are they fish that can swim under the water? In the water, what is it you are talking about? And even if the Turks were to cross the shore, it is not as if I do not know the son of Osman. I know him well. Only yesterday I came head to head with him. Let us skirt the near side of these mountains and go to Edirne by the Black Sea coast. Then you will see what I can do. He continued at length with such nonsense. So I'll read the next two sections and then probably wrap this one up. So the siege of the castle of Puerto. So they're anyway. So before I continue, another point of commentary. So they're getting closer to Varna now, and I'll probably read the account of Varna on its own as its own third part of this. But so if you're following the map, so they've marched to Shumen, they were ambushed at Nicopolis, marched to Tarnovo, uh, capture Shumen, and they're getting quite close to Varna. But of course, if you look at the map, the Ottoman army is marching very close in the same direction. So, okay, continuing the siege of the castle of Portovadi. After further consultation, they left the place known as Matara. However, all its inhabitants had left the castle of Portovadie. Finding Matara empty, the accursed ones burned the citadel and moved to Portovadi. Thinking that it was like Shumlu, it was their intention to set up cannon for a bombardment. However, the people of Portovadi subjected them to such a hail of cannon and arquebus fire that finding no more than they could chew, the infidels backed off and continued their march. The warriors of Islam subjected them to catcalls and whistles, and then came out after them. They fought with such a battle, and it was with that they fought such a battle that it was only with difficulty that the infidels who were low as the dust were able to save their cannon from their clutches. The battle beneath the castle called Bedrick. Anyway, they left there and camped at a place called Bedrick. However, the castle of Bedrick was in ruins. When Bayezid Bey, son of Kochi Bey, saw this, he gathered his troops around him for a consultation. This castle, he said, is in no state to withstand gunfire. Even if we tried to shut ourselves in and fight, it would be no use, and no help was going to come to us from anywhere. The best thing we can do is to go out and strike the infidels so hard with the sword of Ali Hamza that it will become the stuff of legend. So everyone took leave of their families and went out commending them to God. Uh, One of the footnotes here explaining Ali Hamza, reference to the fourth Caliph Ali, successor to Caliph Uthman, who shares the name with Uthman, founder of the Ottoman dynasty. So, I believe that's in Islamic sort of iconography. If you've ever seen a picture of, it's sort of a sword with like two points, kind of like a forked tongue type of thing. Um, Very common in sort of Islamic and Ottoman uh, uh, banners and sort of iconography. So anyway, now let us see. Um, sorry. Now let us see what heroes' mothers have borne. The cry of Allah, Allah, that lion, set up about what seemed like an ocean of infidels with more force than that words can describe. It was as though the appointed hour of death had come for any infidel who attacked him. He had no hope of ever returning, but went rapidly to hell. When the infidels saw what was happening, they realized that if the battle continued like this, there was no chance of saving the life of a single one of the infidels who were as low as dust. So the accursed Yanko gave order for about 20,000 men to don their iron armor and advance. Immediately, about 20,000 infidels put on their suits of armor and attacked that royal hero. The warriors of Islam realized that swords were no use against the infidels, and at once grabbed hold of axes, clubs, and maces with these and continued the great fight. In the end, the warriors were martyred. May God have mercy on all of them. And what is more, the infidels who were as low as the dust crowded into the castle and realized that it did more and did with it more than they had done with Shumlu. There was no pleasure in telling this tale. So stage by stage, the infidels advanced toward their goal. The evil-doing king was nevertheless extremely distressed and unhappy. It was the accursed man called Yanko who was a proud and arrogant infidel. So that sets the stage for the actual siege of Varna. Quite a reasonably long section. Um, Actually, it seems like it's divided into a few sections. So I'll wrap this video up here. I hope you liked it, and I'll follow up with a third part soon. And this video is getting kind of long, so I hope you enjoyed it. And let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this sort of thing, or if there's another maybe topic you want me to find like a primary sources on, and I'll see if I can find something and read it, and offer some commentary. I don't really have too much commentary on this one. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm just kind of surprised with how common musketry is at this time, because sort of the typical um, rendition of warfare in this period is you have sort of like a few guns, and some cannon here and there, but it's really not that dominant. But it seems like the Ottomans are using quite a bit of musketry and artillery, but the Crusaders had their own artillery too, so um, sort of interesting. But anyway, yeah, I hope you liked it. If you have any suggestions or questions in the comments, please let me know, and I will talk to you all in the next video.